Okay, is everybody ready to get going again?
I think we are ready now.
All right, super. All right, we are back in open session. The board had met in closed session and conferred with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation. We have nothing else to report out. Could I ask for the side conversations to stop in San Rafael, please? So first on our agenda now is swearing in of new board members.
Great. So we're going to need all of our new board members to stand. And I'm going to do the oath of office with all of you. Anyone who hasn't done it yet, I know some folks have. I don't think so. We have only had a, yeah.
So, Dawn, sorry, we had a request for clarification here on whether one of our alternates, David Kuhnhart, should participate in the swearing in.
We do not swear in alternates. That is
Alrighty.
not necessary. Yeah, but thank you anyway.
I think he's a little disappointed, but perhaps slightly relieved. All right.
Yeah, he is welcome to stand and partake of the oath.
I provided a Form 700.
Okay, we're going to get started. So for those of you doing the oath of office, you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. All right, welcome to the board.
Well, welcome very much to the board. I must say that was one of the strangest swearing-ins that I've ever witnessed, since we could hear Dawn, but we couldn't hear any of the board members speaking. So it was kind of like a silent ceremony, but you're very welcome to be here. So next on our agenda is board announcements. Does any director have anything that they would like to announce? Well, I do, and we'd like to take a moment here. Our CEO, Dawn Wise, has been with MCE for 10 years. This is her 10th anniversary. And I understand that there may be a plaque for her in Concord that we'd like to extend to her virtually here from San Rafael. Darlene, I hope that,
Thanks,
is that
Kate.
a plaque? Okay.
Yes, it is, and it's very nice, and we have been putting this off since November because we haven't had a board meeting. But we just wanted to, the staff and the board wanted to present this 10-year anniversary plaque to you. And it says, thank you for 10 years of dedicated service, 2008 to 2018. And we are very excited to present this to you because we appreciate you so very much. There's a card circulating. We've been trying to get signatures since November, but we will take what we have tonight.
Thanks, you all. I was not expecting this to be part of the agenda tonight, and I just want to say it's been an honor to serve MCE, and I'm inspired by all of you every day, and thank you for the opportunity to continue serving.
Thank you so much, Dawn. We did sort of mention your 10-year tenure in passing at the holiday party. It's taken us a while to actually implement this. Is kind of like Christmas in April, but we're looking forward to another 10 years. All righty. So next on our agenda is public open time for items that are not on our agenda. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? We have public in San Rafael, and they don't want to speak. Do you have public in Concord who would like to speak?
Anyone? Okay, no takers.
All righty. Very good. So moving on to item 4, report from the Chief Executive Officer, Dawn. We can't hear you, Dawn. Dawn, we can't hear you.
Thank you. All right,
you.
we're getting the mic thing down. I wanted to start off by providing a very warm welcome to our newest board members. We've had 8 new board members join the MCE board this year. Some of them have been sworn in before this regular meeting, so they didn't all stand up during the swearing in, but I wanted to just mention them by name, and hopefully over the coming year and years, we can all, you all can get to know each other better. So I'd like to take a moment for each of our new members to just say something about yourself, the community that you represent, so that the other board members can kind of get to know you. The first one here on the list is with the City of Benicia. We have Elizabeth Patterson, and you've been an alternate for a while, so you're certainly no stranger to MCE. You're a big part of helping to get Benicia to join MCE. But would you like to say anything further?
The mic on. So I'm the mayor of the city of Benicia, was on the council in 2004, and this is my 3rd term. And one of my main efforts has been to address climate change, and we were sponsored the effort to be the first city in Solano to enroll in MCE. And so I'm really very proud of that achievement. And the reason that I was an alternate is because I wanted the doubters to be at the table so that they would learn the value of what we're doing. And then they were having all the fun, so I wanted to have some fun, so I appointed myself for this term.
Wonderful. The next person on the list is representing the city of Concord, Director Tim Mcglashan. Would you like to say anything to the board?
Just welcome to Concord. Thank you for being here. We appreciate everyone enjoying our city. And no, it's been a pleasure I've been an alternate now for the last year and had an opportunity to see some of the executive meetings and board meetings. And so, no, it's been wonderful, and I'm glad I'll have this opportunity.
Wonderful, thanks. And then with the City of Lafayette, we have Director Mike Anderson.
So I was fortunate enough to be an alternate to Don Tatson, who is also here tonight, I know, for another item on the agenda of not great importance. But the important thing is that he, for 32 years, represented the city in many different forms. He was really great on MCE here. So I'm feeling a little bit at sea at trying to replace him, but I'll do the best I can.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. And then with the town of Moraga, we have Renata Sos.
Hi, I'm Renata Sauce. I'm on the Moraga Town Council. I'm relatively new to the council and relatively new here. I was not an alternate, but I'm very happy to be here and help further this wonderful organization's mission.
Great. And with the city of Pinole, we have Vincent Salimi here.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here with Mr. Anthony Tave, my alternate. I was newly elected. I grew up in Paris, France, and global warming was something very important to me since 1994, ever since I understood what it was about. And I grew up in a family where climate was a big issue. So it's a big honor for me to be here, and I hope to help you to move forward. Thank you for having me here.
Great, thank you. And then with the city of Pittsburgh, we have Chanel Scales-Preston.
Thank you. So I was newly elected to the Pittsburgh City Council in November. I learned from Don today that there's a call center in the city of Pittsburgh, so I look forward to going out to tour and visit. I always had an interest in the environment, so I was really happy that Mayor Benales put me on the board. I look forward to learning more. Thank you.
Great. And with the town of Tiburon, we have John Wellner. But I don't think he is.
No, he is here. He joined us a little late.
Great.
I'm here. I'm actually renewing, having been on last year as well.
Yeah, he's an old new board member. Yeah. Glad you're here, John.
Great. And last but certainly not least, we have City of Walnut Creek, Justin Waddell.
Good evening. I'm in my second term as I was elected in 2012. I'm replacing Rich Carlson as he decided not to run for office last year. It's my first experience with being on the MCE board, but I was directly involved with the process in order to roll Walnut Creek onto MCE.
Great, thank you very much. And we may be welcoming 2 additional board members at our next board meeting. I will talk about that in a moment. But first, I just wanted to give a reminder to folks to speak into the microphone and announce your name before speaking. It'll help in both locations, folks to know who you are. We've kind of learned by trial and error that if you have too many mics on at one time, the next person trying to turn on their mic won't work. So yeah, turning off when you're done will help. Also, if you're silent for a while, it will turn itself off. So be aware of that. And if you turn your head away from the mic, you won't be heard because it doesn't capture if you've turned your head away. I wanted to next introduce our new finance director of finance, Garth Salisbury, and Viken Kasarjian, our chief operations officer in San Rafael, is going to introduce Garth. I think those of you that have been in the executive committee have already gotten to know Garth a little bit, but since this is our first regular board meeting since Garth joined the team in early January, we wanted to make sure everyone got a proper introduction to Garth. So go ahead, Viken.
Okay, Garth is sitting here. I would like to introduce Garth Salisbury, our new Director of Finance. The Director of Finance is a new director position at MCE, and Garth is responsible for all finance, budget, accounting, and internal financial risk management functions. Garth brings over 30 years of public electric utility finance experience, having worked at major investment banks and consulting firms, including 17 years at JP Morgan, 8 years at Lehman Brothers, and 6 years at Royal Bank of Canada. He has financed over $35 billion of utility infrastructure projects over his career and spearheaded the internal approvals for Royal Bank of Canada to invest in renewable energy, production tax credits, and investment tax credits. While at JP Morgan, Garth helped form the California Independent System Operator, including testifying at Federal Energy Regulatory Commission on the structure of the grid management charge, and was one of the senior bankers that completed the largest financing in the history of public finance markets, the $11.3 billion Department of Water Resources California Energy Resources Scheduling Program transaction following the California energy crisis of around year 2000. Garth lives with his wife and 2 young children in Mill Valley. Welcome, Garth.
Thank you, Vic.
Great. The next item I wanted to report on is I wanted to let the board know that the certification letter has been received from the California Public Utilities Commission approving Solano County as a member of MCE. That's unincorporated Solano County. So we are in touch with Solano County to have them appoint a representative to our board, and we will likely have a new representative joining us at our next board meeting. As a reminder, due to some CPUC requirements, we will not be launching service in unincorporated Solano until 2020, likely during the month of April. So we'll be talking about outreach activities later this year. I wanted to let folks know that the City of Mill Valley is formalizing the process to delegate MCE representation to the City of Sausalito based on provisions that we have in our JPA agreement. This is similar to the decision that was made in Napa, where all 5 cities in Napa have delegated their MCE representation to Director Wagon Connect, the county supervisor for Napa. So just wanted to let folks know that that process is underway. We're going to miss having Director McEntee here, but we know she'll be using her time in many good ways, and we're looking forward to continuing to be in touch with the city through that process. Next, I wanted to let folks know that our rate setting process has been delayed somewhat, in part because of some delays that are happening on the regulatory front with PG&E and their proposed rate changes for 2019. We are currently expecting 3 rate changes to be rolled out by PG&E. The first was rolled out on March 1st. There is another rate change expected on May 1st, and then a third rate change expected July 1st. So at this point in the year, we are holding off on having rate setting discussions until we have more information around those prospective rate changes. Sorry, not last, but I'm getting close. I wanted to let folks know that MCE participated in the Senate Energy and Utilities Committee session workshop this Tuesday to talk about regulatory restructuring. You will receive a link to the hearing in case you're interested in viewing it, or you can visit the website. We will be talking about some of the themes from that hearing at the technical committee coming up at the very beginning of April. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about that. Next to last item, I wanted to remind folks that we are currently doing a website survey. If you have any thoughts or suggestions related to the MCE website, we'd love to have you fill out the survey. Our website team has agreed to keep the survey open until Monday. I think it was sent out to everyone a couple of weeks ago. If you can get your responses in by tomorrow, that would be great. But if you need time over the weekend, we can still take responses all the way up until Monday morning. And then the very last item is I just wanted to let folks know that we will need to pull item C4 off of the consent agenda because we've had some very minor changes made to that proposed agreement that we wanted to let the board know about before the approval of that agreement. Any questions on any of these items?
Questions from directors? Okay, seeing none. So let's move on to the consent calendar, and Dawn, perhaps we could start with C4, and we will pull that from consent, and you can describe to us the changes that you're recommending.
Yeah, happy to. I'm just going to say a little bit about this agreement, what it's for, and then Catalina Murphy is going to run through the changes that have been made. So as you may recall, we have a new allocation of funds, a substantially increased allocation of funds for our energy efficiency activities. And part of those funds are for agricultural and commercial activities. Clear Results is a company that has come through kind of the vetting process as being able to handle some of the services that we want to offer on the energy efficiency side. So we've been working with them over the last few months to develop an agreement whereby they would take on some of the obligations of our energy efficiency programs. We had a couple of minor adjustments to the contract really to improve the terms for MCE over the last week since the time the board packet went out. So before the approval, I'd like to have Catalina just at a high level explain what the changes are, and then I think we can move forward.
Thank you, Dawn. Good evening. So the majority of the changes involve adding in the actual date that MCE's non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements were signed. We were still in the process of negotiating those documents before or when this agreement was entered into the packet. We have finalized dates on that. Those are on page 7. And then we also added in Clear Result has a variety of pre-existing materials that they want to retain ownership over, and that's their intellectual property. And so there's an entire section in our contract regarding what they will own, what MCE will own afterwards. And so modifications to those won't be part of their ownership, but just the original templates. And we were able to define that more specifically. And that's the edit that's on page 8 in section 22.6.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions from the board or comments on any of those changes proposed for item C4? Okay, seeing none.
So we have a comment here, or question here in Concord.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so this is probably because I'm a newbie, and I apologize to Elizabeth Patterson here. I'm really interested in this aspect, obviously because of Solano County, and which it's highest source of income in Solano County is agriculture. I'm also interested in the relationship that this could have with the state because of some of the aggressive programs that the Department of Water Resources has, as a for instance, and the Energy Commission, et cetera. So could you expand on that?
I'm going to pass this to Alice, who is our director of customer programs. I think she has a better insight on how we're handling our business plan and energy efficiency programs.
Hi. Yeah, just to start off, I'd like to explain the way this contract is structured. The first part of our relationship with Clear Result will be designing the program. So during the first several months of the contract, we will be looking at how we'll be approaching ag customers. And as anyone who has heard some of the ongoing presentations around our business plan, we're always interested in ways to integrate other services as we have done on the residential side. So that would be something that we would be exploring during the program design phase. The opportunity to integrate water efficiency savings I think is what I potentially am hearing.
So I just want to say that be happy to work with you on that since I work for the Department of Water Resources.
Great. That'd be wonderful.
Terrific. Any other questions on this item? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Motion from Wagon
moved.
Connect. Yep.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Darlene, do you know who made the motion and the second? Just checking with you.
Tim Mcgallion.
It was Wagon Connect who made the motion.
And Tim Mcgallion made the second.
Excellent. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Consent is approved. All right. So now we're on to a much more important item on our agenda, which is the presentation of the Charles F. Mcglashan Advocacy Award. And this is a particularly good year because we're diverting from our usual practice just a little bit. So who is going to introduce this item? I thought the motion was for all of the consent calendar. Was it only for C4?
I know. Sorry, Don.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra McGee. Sorry for popping out of the room there for a moment. I have the pleasure of presenting this item to your board. So for those of you who've been around, this is old news, but I hear we have many new faces in the room. Welcome. And I would like to share a tradition with you. So every year, MCE likes to honor advocates in the community who've done a great deal of work in the spirit of MCE's mission. And this can take a number of forms. For the most part, these are spokespeople who engage their networks and their community and their constituents to demystify community choice and encourage communities to go deep green or perhaps to promote some of our programming. And so over the course of MCE's history, we've nominated and honored a number of advocates. And this year, to break with tradition, after reviewing all the 2018 nominees, the executive committee decided to honor all 3 nominees with this year's 2018 Charles Mcglashan Advocacy Award. So I believe we have the advocates I know Sustainable Lafayette is in the room, and can I hear from San Rafael if Verna is there and if Tamara is there?
Tamara is here and Verna is here too. We have 2 out of the 3. We're excited about that.
Excellent. So I'd like to take a moment to recognize their efforts and then give them a moment to speak a bit about their experience working with MCE over the last year. So Sustainable Lafayette last year helped coordinate a celebration of their city's 50th anniversary. The city of Lafayette incorporated 50 years ago. And so in recognition of that achievement, Sustainable Lafayette helped launch the Gift of Green, which coordinated a number of community partners and members and had quite a significant goal of trying to get 1,000 new deep green opt-ups, which is quite a lot. It would have put them at #1 in our deep green lineup out of all our 33 member communities. They had started in 10th place, right behind San Rafael with 3.16% of all accounts in deep green. And over the course of a full year, which include creating videos and tabling events and going door to door, talking to their neighbors, this concerted effort brought them to 6th place, almost doubling their deep green numbers, getting them to 5.1% of all accounts in Lafayette to deep green. Putting them now in 6th place. So I would like to recognize Sustainable Lafayette for a year-long, very concerted, hard-won effort. I would also like to recognize Resilient Neighborhoods, which is why Tamara Peters is in the room. Talk about a long game. So since 2012, Resilient Neighborhoods has been working on these issues, encouraging EV adoption, encouraging energy efficiency, as well as MCE's 100% renewable energy option. And over the course of many years, they have helped 51 households go deep green or to PG&E's 100% option as well, no carbon. They have helped 63 homes invest in energy efficiency, and even 5 of those homes have put in solar systems. So I wanted to recognize Tamara for her excellent work in Resilient Neighborhoods, the many multi-year, multifaceted work that she's doing in Marin County. And lastly, I'd like to celebrate Verna Cosby-Smith with EAH Housing. Some of the programs that we offer require a lot of hand-holding to overcome the barriers to get someone to, especially in the multifamily realm, engage in our programs. So Verna has done an excellent job to promote our MCE's low-income families and tenant program, and recently has recruited the 378 unit Crescent Park homes in Richmond to participate in this very difficult, hard to reach program in its sector. So with that, and my thanks to the board for recognizing the achievements of all 3 of these efforts and these organizations, I would like to honor Sustainable Lafayette, Resilient Neighborhoods, and Verna Cosby-Smith from EAH Affordable Housing as the recipients for the 2018 Charles Mcglashan Award. And I believe we have some public comment, if that's all right with Darlene.
And I'd like to give each of our awardees an opportunity to speak, but first, I think we should have a motion and a second to actually formally approve recognizing these 3 organizations. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd be happy to make a motion. Kevin Harrell from
Second.
the City of Larkspur.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I think having heard about the organizations, you can see why the executive committee decided we just couldn't pick one. So Lafayette, do you want to just talk first about your good work?
I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. This is Wei Tai Kwok. I'm the past president of Sustainable Lafayette, a local grassroots organization. In October of last year, the United Nations issued a report that said we have less than 12 years to take urgent action to avert the worst consequences of the climate crisis. This makes it extremely important for local organizations like ourselves to act as quickly as possible to move away from polluting fossil fuels and to renewable energy. For this reason, I want to thank MCE for everything you've been doing for the last decade to help communities like ourselves become part of the solution to the climate crisis. You've made it easy for people like us to opt up to deep green, and you've made it inexpensive to do so. So thank you for that. I love paying my bill every month, knowing that I'm voting with my wallet and that every dollar is going to procure 100% made in California electrons from California solar and wind farms. But let's not rest on our laurels, please. We can be reminded last Friday by the global student climate strike marching down Market Street and millions of students around the world that youth voices of today are not satisfied with what the adults are doing, and that we have to act much more quickly and boldly in our actions and not just take an incremental approach to the solution. So I ask you all to do more, act faster, help build out more EV infrastructure for us, help us to decarbonize our buildings, help to deploy more utility scale energy storage, do more and faster. And organizations, grassroots like us in Sustainable Lafayette, we're here to work with you and to encourage you to aim higher and higher. So thank you very much for recognizing and acknowledging the Charles Mcglashan Advocacy Award to us. I want to thank Mayor Don Tatson, who helped lead our Lafayette 50th Anniversary Gift of Green campaign and make us a good excuse to go work with our communities to raise awareness about deep green. Thank you very much.
Mayor Tatson, did you want to say something?
Well, I'll be very brief. I just, you know, when I was mayor last year, it was our 50th anniversary of incorporation, and in our planning for it, we had a group get together and we tried to think of what kind of gift could we as a populace give to ourselves as a city. And the idea developed that since we had joined MCE in 2016, a few years ago, and the deep green idea was being pushed, that getting more people to opt up to deep green would be a good gift to give to the community because it would provide a cleaner environment for generations to come. And so I put that in one of my goals for the 50th anniversary celebration. And it so happens that Wei Tai and I live about 2 doors apart from each other. So I wandered over to him and said, would Sustainable Lafayette be interested in helping? And that was wonderful because they did all the work and I got to take a lot of the credit. So I just want to thank the MCE for recognizing Sustainable Lafayette's efforts and very much appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Good to see you. All right, so maybe we could move to resilient neighborhoods next. Tamara? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm not quite sure where to look.
You can look at us. It'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really honored to receive this award for resilient neighborhoods, the more so because I knew Charles Mcglashan and was involved in the battle to form MCE. Seeing the power of citizens making the difference was a real motivator for me to create resilient neighborhoods. Residents fought the behemoth of PG&E and we won. Yes. And like MCE, we are continuing to fight a bigger behemoth now, which is climate change. I can't say we are winning that battle yet, but we are off to a solid start. More than 1,100 residents have graduated from our behavior change program that organizes people into climate action teams. Each household goes on a low-carbon diet to lose 5,000 pounds in 60 days. We also build community resilience by helping families prepare for emergencies and to support local business. It's working. Our graduates have reduced their collective annual CO2 emissions by over 6 million pounds, an average of 31% per household. Of interest to MCE, the team I graduated last night and the one graduating tonight in Mill Valley will add another 6 EVs and 10 deep green customers. Since we started, that's a total of 73 EVs and 223 opt-ups to deep green. In the last 2 years, alone, participants have also taken more than 300 energy efficiency actions, like installing electric heat pumps and Energy Star appliances. Our graduate volunteers are helping us grow by coaching teams and providing a concierge service for people who want guidance getting EVs, electric bikes, and solar, including renters who want charging stations or more efficient appliances at their multi-unit buildings. In short, we motivate people and show them the path to achieve a carbon neutral household. This is a journey we must all take in the future. Resilient Neighborhoods will be working in partnership with MCE, Drawdown Marin, and all your cities and towns, and the other wonderful groups that are joining the battle to achieve a fossil fuel-free society. Thank you again, MCE, for this honor.
Affordable housing. Congratulations and welcome.
Frankly, when they called and told me about this award, I was surprised. It's my job to bring resources to EAH housing, and I'm really happy that MCE has been able to help us in several different ways in helping us design new properties. Mackey Terrace up in Nevada was one of our most recent properties that took advantage of the incentives and the advice from MCE. Crescent Park is an older property where the input from MCE will help us extend the life of the property. And that's where I come in with MCE and bringing the resources that you bring to us. That's why I was surprised. It's like, you're me? To our properties, those properties that age 10, 15, 20 years old, where we have limited resources for recapitalization. It's a vital piece of keeping it all together. So rather than talk about anything that we've achieved, just want to congratulate MCE in being part of Team Affordable Housing. Every dollar counts, every suggestion for advice means a lot. This is an area of expanding technologies that we all have to learn about. And just thank you. Just as a plug for EAH, been around since 1968, did get started by a group of clergy in response to part of the civil rights movement right after the assassinations of Martin Luther King, and said part of this problem is segregation and housing, and we've got to do something about it. And they've grown to over 100 properties. We have a new office in Los Angeles. There are 10 properties in Hawaii, and we range in the Bay Area from Cloverdale in the north to Santa Cruz in the south. So when you guys are done with Napa, Solano, Contra Costa, and Marin, there's more territory. And I'll find you out there. But thank you again on behalf of EAH.
Thank you so much. We all know how important affordable housing is and how we don't have nearly enough of it. So we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with you and work with you to make that piece of our world a lot better than it is now. There's more. You're going to do more? Okay, good. Fantastic. All right.
If I could just add, sorry for the interruption, if we could get a picture with the Advocate Awards. I think we have photographers in both locations.
Okay. All right, let's do that real quick.
Can you face this way?
I'm having so much fun snuggling up to the camera.
All right, a couple more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Like we're still taking some. Okay, are we good? Are we still taking pictures in Concord?
We are all set to go.
All right, so I want to, and apologies to everyone, I want to come back for a moment to the consent calendar because when we did the motion, I believed it was for the consent calendar as a whole, but it may have only been for item C4. So, Darlene, I'm not sure what your records show.
My records show the same.
Okay.
Only for C4.
All right, so let's come right back and do do a redo on that.
I'll move
Second.
consent items C1, 2, and 3.
Do I have a second?
I'd like to abstain from C2.
Okay. All right. Did I have a second?
We have a second here in Concord.
Excellent. All right.
Director Patterson.
Very good. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition and noting the abstention. Thank you so much, and sorry about that. All right. So item 7 on our agenda is new board member additions to committees.
Great. So I can introduce this briefly. MCE has two standing committees, as you all are aware, our executive committee and our technical committee. We also have, from time to time, we will form an ad hoc committee. We currently have one that's been formed to handle rate setting in 2019. And at this time, because we have some folks that have departed from committees and some new board members joining, we just wanted to take a moment and see if there's interest among the board in joining one of our standing committees at this time. And we have two folks that have already come forward expressing interest in our executive committee. Director Renata Sos and Director Tim Mcglashan from Concord have both expressed interest in being on the executive committee. And we aren't able to have more than 14 on that committee. But that would put us at 12, so we have a little bit of room there. So at this time, I'd like to see if there are any other board members that would like to join one of our existing committees beyond the two I've already mentioned.
And as the chair of the technical committee, I'd really like to encourage any of the new board members to join the technical committee. It may sound more daunting than it actually is. It's a wonderful way to really get into the heart of the business. So if anyone has an interest and time to do it, you're more than welcome.
I will be more than happy to volunteer wherever I'm needed. So either the technical committee or the executive committee, whatever you suggest.
Wonderful. Well, we do have more empty seats on the technical committee, so if you're open to either, I think that's where we would recommend.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Great. Anyone else?
Okay.
Okay. Yes, sorry, Greg.
I'll give a plug for the tech committee.
Please do.
I just want to make sure that people know that the tech committee has 4 different meeting locations. And so it's actually very easy to get to a meeting location as a result of the 4 different meeting locations. So you can host it in your city hall. So if that's an easy commute for you, you don't have to think about going to one of the 2 meeting places on our board meeting. So just wanted to give a plug for the tech committee.
Great, thanks for that, Greg. The substance isn't bad either. All right.
Good point.
Anyone else? Okay. So I think we need a motion, Don, to approve these additions to our committee.
We need a motion. We have 3 board members volunteering, and we need a motion. I'm sorry, was that a motion? Okay, we have a motion from Director Waddell. Do we have a second? Great.
Did you get a second?
Yes, we have a second. Director Perkins here in Concord.
All right, great. All in favor?
It was Anderson. I'm so sorry. Director Anderson.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you so much. All right, so moving on to item 8 on our agenda is the proposed budgets for fiscal year 2019 to 20. Garth, I'm assuming this is going to be you.
Yes, it is, Director Sears. Thank you. And in sensitivity to how long this meeting is going to go tonight, I didn't spend much time when I introduced, but I just want to say how pleased and excited I am to be part of MCE. Been following the organization for a very long time. I actually hosted Charles Mcglashan at my house early on during one of the information meetings. So again, just really, really pleased to be here. So we're going to bring up some items here to look at. So before the end of every fiscal year, which is March 31st, the MCE staff presents budgets to the Executive Committee and to the Board for considerations for the Operating Fund, the Energy Efficiency Program Fund, and the Local Renewable Energy Development Fund for the upcoming fiscal year, which will be 1920. These budgets authorize staff to spend funds within the limits set forth in each budget line item, fund MCE's Local Renewable Energy Development Fund, electric vehicle and other customer programs, and then add to MCE's operating fund balance and reserves. I wanted to take a moment and sort of and give us a little historical perspective about MCE and our operations. And this is sort of a look back at our audited financial statements starting in the 2013-14 fiscal year and sort of going forward to the current fiscal year and then the proposed budget year for next year. And really just wanted to point out that our income and expense numbers, in particular, our change in that position, or what we bring to the bottom line each year, has varied quite a bit over this time frame. But generally, we try to target somewhere around 4% to our net position. But you can see that that has varied based upon the year, the revenues and expenses each year. And as this organization has grown, bringing on additional customers and cities and counties. So what I'd like to do is talk about where we are in the current fiscal year and what we're proposing for the budget in 1920. So the projected budget is the actual by month through the first 9 months of the current fiscal year, so April through December, and then our projections for January, February, and March of this year. So these are much more accurate numbers in terms of our actual expenditures and revenues, but they're not the approved budget from last year. So we wanted to do a comparison to next year's budget versus what we see to be the actuals for fiscal 18 and 19. So quickly on the energy revenue side, we expect on a proposed budget our revenues to stay basically flat, and this really is because we don't expect much expansion in our service area, and really just it will be primarily related to just additional opt-ins and additional revenues associated just with increased costs. So on the cost of energy side, we do expect and anticipate the energy cost to go up quite a bit, about 6.47% over the current fiscal year. And that kind of brings us to a net energy revenue line item of approximately $19 million. I'm sorry here, let me get down a little bit here, sorry. But actually from the net energy revenue from 56 down to 38 million, or a decrease of about $18 million. So touching on each individual line item here, on personnel costs.
Can you explain a little bit more why the cost of energy went up so much?
Yeah, absolutely. The projected cost of energy, which includes all of our PPA agreements and charges by the California Independent System Operator for scheduled load and services, and resource adequacy, which is a regulatory requirement. So what we're seeing is, just generally speaking, some of our, when we think about our unhedged amounts, so not our PPAs, because those prices are pretty much locked in, but some of this other energy that we need to purchase to meet our load, the cost of that has gone up. And so too, we need resource adequacy, which is reserves behind that, and the cost of that has gone up as well. MCE did a pretty good job, actually a very good job, in putting on certain hedges in years past, but some of those attractive hedges are sort of rolling off now, and so we're buying more of that resource adequacy sort of in the current market. And in the projections for fiscal 1920, are reflective of those higher costs. On the personnel side, actually from our last year's budget, the current budget, that's actually quite flat, but we do expect to have some additional of the employees that are now going to be fully costed in this fiscal year, and COLA adjustments and so on. We expect that the overall cost will be up from our current expenditures by about 9%. And then also there'll be an offset of about $764,000, which will be an allocation of those personnel costs to our energy efficiency programs. Technical and scheduling services and service fees and PG&E and Calpine, those expenditures are relatively flat. We don't expect a whole lot of change net there. Legal and policy services, we do expect those expenses to go up, reflective of now we're outsourcing some of our legal costs as opposed to currently on staff, and additional costs associated with regulatory activity and new issues related to employment law, and of course the PG&E bankruptcy. Communication Services, this is around all our costs associated with print and online and other advertising, printing and mailing. Those expenditures are expected to go up versus our current actual expenditures, but in fact are projected to be lower than the current year's budget. Other services are actually declining about 25%, and that's primarily related to moving some of the finance functions out of other services and into this new finance and contingency line. We'll talk about that in just a second. General administrative costs are going up about 28%. And that's really related to the cost of an increased number of employees, and additional software, information and security systems, and for human resources. Occupancy costs are going up, and that's almost entirely related to the fully costed Concord office. We'll be paying a full year's rent in the next fiscal year. Finance and contingency, again, this is a new budget line item. And that is going to be primarily related to originally 2, but now 3 full-time employees in finance. And the other thing in the past, and what we've done with budgeting, is this organization has grown so quickly. It was very, very difficult to budget just because of we were adding so many new customers and expanding in terms of employees and necessary activities. So there was always a contingency built into each budget of approximately 8 to 10%. So I think as we're going to be sort of steady state now, certainly for the next fiscal year, what we're implementing is reducing those contingencies to approximately 4% and putting that contingency down into the finance line. And so we'll allocate that contingency as necessary to the other line items. And so again, that just tightens the budget up so we don't over budget as we did, as we have currently in the current fiscal year. 2 other important items is local pilot programs. Now, those were always paid out of current operating revenues. And so what we're going to be doing is moving local pilot programs and the low-income solar program. And we'll be paying that out of what we're going to be renaming the Local Renewable Energy and Program Development Fund. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So that brings our total operating expenses projected to be about $25 million. And this, over last year's budget, that's actually not much larger than the original budget, but about $2 million after what we expect to be our actual spend in the current fiscal year. So that results in a projected operating income number in next fiscal year of about $12 million. Once we add some grant income, interest income, non-operating revenues and expenses, that number comes to approximately $14 million. So all in, we expect, and then from that, we make some transfers, again, to fund some of the EV programs and into the Local Renewable Energy Development Fund, which projected to leave us with a net addition to our operating fund of about $13 million.
A question, something I would like to see in future reports like this is what is our operating fund balance? We see what the increase is, and you showed an earlier spreadsheet, or at least a few numbers of how the operating fund balance was increasing year over year. But I don't see anywhere in this report what is our operating fund balance.
Well, there's a slight difference between the operating fund balance and the budgeted net position. It's basically a cash basis versus other funds that we have on hand.
I didn't see either of them in here.
Okay, well, the budgeted net position here is on line 39. So the projected budgeted net position is $86 million
We don't have line 89.
I'm sorry, 39, sorry. It is, oh, you don't have, if you're looking at the actual printout, you're not going to.
I've got printed copy here. I don't have.
Okay, so.
Oh, Jesus, all right.
Sorry,
My glasses aren't good enough to see that. Okay.
I apologize, I don't know who's speaking, but if you look under change in net position, kind of down below the regular operating budget, if you look in the change in net position.
There we go, okay.
Okay, so there's budgeted net position at end of period. So we project a budgeted net position of 86,700,000 at the end of the current fiscal year. And with the proposed and budgeted increase of $14 million, that would bring us to about $100 million.
Thank you.
Okay. I would like to talk a little bit about the energy efficiency budget. And the energy efficiency budget is funded with money that comes from the PUC. And really, after requesting a large increase in this amount, we did finally start receiving large increase in monies for the energy efficiency fund from the PUC in the current fiscal year. And so the approved budget for the current fiscal year, and again, we take in money and then we spend this money out of the budget. We also allocate, as I mentioned earlier, we allocate some of our staff costs related to administering these programs. So into the current fiscal year, it's approximately $4 million, but we expect a pretty large jump in both the funding and the expenditures in the energy efficiency fund for the next fiscal year to be approximately $10.5 million.
Can I ask, how much do we keep in reserve? What percentage?
In reserve, in the entire budget?
Yeah.
Well, contribution of 4%, I thought.
Right, in average. So, I mean, if you want to think about our reserves, think about that net position number. I mean, in terms of actual cash, it's pretty close to that. But yeah, it's about, in terms of the cash that MCE has, it's approximately $70-some million, close to, and by the end of this fiscal year, it'll be closer to $80 million. Right.
Can I follow up on that? Just a quick question. So if you, 100 million, but 70 million cash on hand, how much do we have invested in our portfolio then?
In our investment portfolio?
Correct. That's a lot of cash down on hand.
Yeah, most of that, well, we'll be talking a little bit later about our investment policy and how we intend to better invest that cash. But the cash is now invested in, and we have collateral with a number of entities, including the California Independent System Operator. And we have some collateral with our bank to back the letter of credit we have there. But we have $10 million invested in what are known as CDRs or CDs, FGIC-backed CDs. But the rest of that cash is invested as effectively in savings account at the bank. And so that's something, again, we want to address here shortly.
So it's not actually in an actual portfolio working for us at this moment. I see we're going to get to it later in the agenda, but I was kind of curious on where we were at with that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Because we cannot see each other, could I ask any director who speaks to say their name and their city? Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, one of the other requests here today is that the staff and executive committee propose consolidating two funds, the local Renewable Energy Development Fund and the Renewable Energy Reserve Fund, and renaming the combined fund the local Renewable Energy and Program Development Fund. So as mentioned earlier, we'll be funding some of these programs out of this fund. And what we'll be doing is taking about $1.2 million that was sitting in this reserve fund, really not being used over the last few years, and putting it into this fund to put it to work with some of, in particular, our EV charging and other programs. So with that, I mean, the fiscal impact here of this proposed operating fund budget is a projected addition to the net position of approximately $14.3 million. Again, this budget and the revenues associated with it assume no change in MCE's rates. So again, we will, obviously be looking at that and potentially looking at rates after we know exactly what PG&E is going to be doing. The other anticipated budget impacts, in addition to what PG&E is doing, again, is finally seeing what the PCI rate is going to be. Other impacts, again, is the energy resource recovery account for PG&E. Once we see these, we'll know just where our rates are compared to PG&E's and what we might be able to do there. And time of use rates. PG&E's reform of the TOU rates will likely require a corresponding change to MCE's rates. So these are all things that we'll be looking at over the course of the year that will affect this budget and will affect our revenue projections. And as well as we work harder to bring down the actual cost of energy. So those two will be potentially coming back to talk to you about how all that's going over the course of the year. So the recommendation is from the staff and the executive committee to recommend that the board of directors approve both the budgets for fiscal 19-20 and the consolidation of the local renewable energy development fund and renewable energy reserve fund, and rename the fund the local renewable energy and program development fund.
Great. Thank you, Garth. Any questions? David Kuhnhart, did you remember to turn your, yeah.
Please. Thank you very much. David Kuhnhart, Corte Madera, and also a co-mentor with Wei Tai Kwok, the Lafayette Award winner, who sent you a letter today on this topic. Garth, congratulations on catching up to this beast so quickly. What would you say is the total number that's going to be devoted towards the EV program in the coming year?
Question.
Alternate.
Oh, go again. That's a great question, Director Kuhnhart. We are, let me get to the number here. So local, and Alice can probably answer that, that question. Two-thirds, I'm sorry. Yeah, so in that budget number, let me see here, we can. Right, it is, for the local pilot programs, it's about $2 million, it's over $2 million.
Wait, excuse me, Garth. I just wanted to let you know we have Alice here who can also weigh in on that because she's managing the program. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can add to that just a little bit of information to that. So the plan that we have for the EV program is $1.5 million per year over 3 years. And the reason why the number for this coming year is slightly higher than that is we've entered into commitments in this past year for sites that are in the process of building out charging stations that we've committed rebate funds to. And so some of that money is now built into next year's budget so that we can honor those commitments. And that's in addition to the $1.5 million for next year's program.
And I'm going to give the opinion that the number should double. And there's a selfish reason and a selfless reason to doing so. One of the only ways and places where an energy, a load-serving entity can increase its retail is through this wonderful growth in the EV market, right? An individual household is their own, and I've just learned this in the last few months of having an electric vehicle. My individual energy bill's gone up between 40 and 50%. Others have reported slightly higher. So it's a source of income. It's an investment in additional income for MCE. But obviously the selfless reason is the mission connection with the climate goals of MCE. Every time I meet a new advocate, and there are many, many of them out there in climate, they say, we don't have any time, the time is now. And just one other thought about this is that I've been in the solar industry for 12 years, as you have too. The subsidies in that whole program, and it's true of batteries now, are designed to be bold in the beginning and wane down over time. And the value of that is, A, in the long run you save money, but B, it's that early investment that is like yeast, that really creates turning points, and that's what I'm hoping that MCE will look at this. And you're also the nexus of a program that's going to get money from other places. And in my role on TAM, I'm going to try to boost the money that TAM contributes to MCE for this very purpose.
That's a really interesting area. I just want to say we're very excited. Alice's team is doing a great job of expanding into this area. We're looking at expanding into actually charging large truck systems. You know, that's like each one would be equal to like probably 20 cars or so in increasing our load in deep green. Looking at charging time of use rates on complementing the existence of the so-called the famous duck curve on how we enhance charging or stimulate charging stations. And this is on top of the 4 or 5 opportunities we're going to have to bring you probably amended budgets and new types of rates for your consideration through engaging the ad hoc committee moving forward. So it's going to be pretty exciting fiscal year for the budget.
Great, thank you, Vic. And other questions or comments from directors?
If I may, Greg Lyman, El Cerrito.
Greg Lyman, thank you.
Garth, welcome aboard. Nice meeting you. I wanted to follow up on the projected, refresh my memory. February of last year, we adopted a budget, and in that budget, we were projecting actually a change in net position of $55 million. And then later in the year, once we set rates, we potentially tweaked the budget. So I'm just curious how all of a sudden it's dropped to 30 million. So I was just curious if you could speak to that 20 million. Just as a layman, it looks like it's all off the revenue, going from 384 down to 354. But I was wondering if you could speak to why we've significantly lower change in net position in actuality, or what you're projecting for the balance of the year versus what we were discussing a year ago. Microphone.
On, it goes off. Okay. Absolutely. So this original projection was based upon, we had a huge increase in service area and so on. I believe, John DeLessie, you're there, and please jump in at any time. So we did not have really great information about the customers from PG&E when we made the original projections. And we also had, we didn't realize the amount of solar that was in the service area in Contra Costa County. So the revenue projections were significantly higher than we realized over the course of the year. That was one of the primary reasons. And again, we didn't have good average look back. We just had 1 year of data from which to make the projections. And it wasn't a good characteristic year to do that. So that was a big part of the revenue side. And on the energy side, just as we've been talking about, those energy costs are looking to be, a good probably $7 to $8, $9, $10 million greater than originally projected. So between those two things, that eats directly into the margin. Lower revenues, higher cost on the energy side. And so, yes, the original projections were high by a good, 20-some or more $1 million. We'll see how the rest of the fiscal year plays out, but we do expect to come in somewhere between, 28 to 30-some million dollars in net. That's for the remaining of the fiscal year.
This is Greg Lyman again. So the projection for this year, I think you had it up, was a net position change of about 14 million. And there was a question, and I'm going to frame it slightly differently. A year ago, we were told that our target reserve number was about $145 million. What would you say our target reserve number is now? The note I have is that we were at 70, if we had all 50 million come in, we would be at roughly 80% of our target at 100 and some million. So just curious, in your mind, what is the target for this reserve?
And I'm happy to jump in, and Garth, you can add on. I know you're getting questions about things that happened before you were even here, so I can speak a little bit to that question. And just note that our reserve target hasn't changed. So what you just stated, Director Lyman, is still our reserve target. We maintain progress towards that target because it helps us, maintain and likely will help us enhance our credit rating going forward. So that's why it's important to have a reserve contribution every year that helps us move towards that target. As discussed in the past, we still are years away from meeting that target, but we're definitely making significant progress year over year. Do you want to add anything to that, Garth?
Microphone.
No, sorry, Don. Really, I think our goal is a metric of 140, 150 days cash on hand. And so as our revenues go up, so too does that goal. So we are making progress towards it, but as Don says, I think we're probably a couple of years away, from being able to get there and then maintain that.
And I've just one other comment. I know we've in the past we've looked at reports like this where we've gotten fairly high overview level presentation. The fact that there have been staff changes or staff increases, I think you talked about the finance in the written document. It said there were going to be 2, and then in your presentation there's 3, and that potentially begins to explain a $1.3 million budget for that line item. It would be great if we had some sense of the staff changes, just so we can get a sense of the change in personnel, whether it's due to COLAs or due to increases in personnel. So that's just a comment for future. Thanks.
Okay. Director Withy.
Thank you. Ray Withy, Sausalito. I'd like to follow up on Director Lyman's questions there. So the problem is, as I see it, because there is a problem here, our reserve policy, which was put in place last March, and I've got the memo here, that from the staff report from David McNeil, actually predicted that there would also be in 1920 throwing off about 50 million of free cash flow. And in actual fact, I realize that we've got this 4% lurking around that we were in the past putting, trying to aim for 4%, and the history shows that we were up and down, right? That's not what it says anymore in our reserve policy that we put in place a year ago. I'll read it. The reserve target is currently calculated as the sum of 90 days of operating expenses plus 15% of revenues. Sorry, let me just find my part in this. And it was specifically put in the reserve policy that MCE would achieve its reserve target by March 31st, 2020. And that's what it says. Here's the policy. I'm reading it, okay? And so that was based on, presumed on, that at the steady state, roughly, of $350, $380 million worth of revenue, with the target of about 140 growing up 150 million each year as the target. We were going to make that by 2020 very easily if, in fact, you were throwing off $50 million worth of cash flow. Now, your steady state says, under current prices and current rates, admittedly, no rate changes, so I understand that the most you're going to throw off is 13 million as opposed to 50, right? So right now, there's no way you can actually meet the policy goal that you actually have in your policy. And so, number one, that's got to be changed. It's also got to be rethought what our reserve policy is, because if in fact your operating model is going to continue with that, and I know we're going to throw in next year another expansion, so that's going to put a little bit of a wrench in the works. But again, assuming steady state, this organization's future cash flow, because you're claiming due to energy increases basically, and less than predicted revenues and energy increases, is a totally different beast now than it was last year. The whole risk model of the reserves is very different. And quite frankly, I think this board should have been informed about that a lot earlier than 10 days before the end of the financial year. I realize it's difficult to predict. Sorry, Donna, let me just finish. I realize it's difficult to budget. I mean, I realize that this is a budget from hell when you're expanding and trying to make the prediction. I understand that. But I'm really worried that we set ourselves on an expenditure course and a staffing increase based on, at least I did, based on what I thought was the knowledge that we would be hitting that reserve target within another year. So that's a problem I'm having. It's a risk model is falling apart. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that without information coming in a more timely manner, I'm able to actually perform my fiduciary duty.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that, if I could, Director Withey. I'd like to first note that this variation that we saw in the projected budget versus the actual budget in the current fiscal year was first observed in the late summer. And so we first brought it to the committee level in August, and then again multiple times during the end of last year. So we've been talking about this issue as we've collected information since that time. And I just want to highlight the three areas where we saw variation that Garth outlined well, but I can add a little bit more of historical context because MCE has gone through expansions for multiple years, and we've the same factors that we faced in this current year have gone in our favor in prior years. The three areas, just to summarize, are load. So what is our load going to be? How many kilowatt hours do we need to sell over the course of a year? And we need to project that based on historic load usage data that we get from PG&E. We found that the load data that was provided to us during this most recent expansion was varied quite a bit from the actuals that we saw. And we don't know if that is because there's been a change in the quality of the data we're getting from PG&E, or if it just so happens that the most recent year of usage data that we received had very different weather variables or other impacts that caused the load to be different. The second factor that contributes to load is the number of net energy metering customers and the amount of net energy metering load, which really behaves as negative load in the daytime when we're producing a lot of solar energy, and then very expensive load in the evening when we're paying premium prices during the evening hours when it's harder to get low-cost energy, and where we don't our renewables aren't delivering as much during that time. So the high quantity of net energy metering customers, certainly beyond what we were able to anticipate, had an impact on the projection. And then the last factor is the cost of power, the price of power. And as you know, we put in hedges to cover the majority of our purchasing, and that allows us to keep a lot of stability around our rates. But there's always a percentage that's left open. And in prior years, because prices have remained low over over the last few years, having a bit of an open position has proved to be very beneficial to MCE. We've taken, that's added to our reserves quite a bit. During this last year, we saw the opposite happen, and the prices going up were a factor, not just for the small amount that we had unhedged, but also because we had several contracts that had been entered into when prices were low that were coming to the end of their term life, and we needed to replace them with new contracts. And when we did that, the prices in the market were higher, so we had to lock in at slightly higher rates. So all that's to say that, projecting the amount of revenue that's going to come in to the agency is not an exact science. We're dealing with many hypotheticals, especially in the first year. But I think that regardless of the variation that we've seen, I think we need to keep in mind that we're talking about a $350 million budget. So a variance between 34 million and 50 million is a fairly small percentage. It's a lot of money, sure, to all of us when you're thinking about a variation of that size, but it is also a rather small percentage of the overall budget. And I think that the important thing to keep in mind, and I would draw your attention to the second page of Garth's staff report, where he has a chart showing the contribution to net position going back to fiscal year 2013-14, all the way through our projection this year. And just as a reminder, when we were a younger agency, or even going back to 2013-14 during the Richmond expansion, the contribution to net position was 1.92%. And that was a change in net position of 1.6 million. The following year, it was a bit higher. We got closer to that 3 to 4% target that we've always had, with the contribution of 3.7 million. And then we had a very strong year in 2015-16. That was the year that there was an expansion to Benicia and Napa, I believe. That year resulted in a contribution of over 10% at 16 million. The following year, the contribution was 8% at 15 million again. And then we had a tougher year in 17-18 where we dropped back down to 2.95% as our contribution to reserve, and that was the 6 million number. So it's really not until 18-19 that we saw anything above 16.2 million, and the net contribution of 34 million is certainly the biggest contribution to reserves that we've seen in the history of MCE. Certainly it did not meet or exceed the projections that we made at the time we were planning for the expansion, but we had no choice but to bake into our planning and our pro forma the actual prices that were in the market at that time. We had no way of predicting what changes would occur later in the year, and we also had no way of better predicting our load, given that we're very constrained in the historic load information that we get from PG&E. So I just want to acknowledge that there's been a change, remind folks what we've talked about many times since August through the end of the year, and again at the beginning of this year in our committee meetings and even at the board. We've discussed this issue to make sure that folks understand it. And happy to answer more questions about that, but hopefully that summary helps explain what contributed to the variation, and hopefully also give comfort that we've still had, we are in the midst of a very healthy year with the second largest contribution to reserves at 9.58%. That's the second largest contributions to reserves that we've ever seen, going back all the way to 2013. Is there anything that you want to add to that, John?
This is John DeLesse, and I mean, I think that's all an excellent explanation. For me, the main issue on, the variance in the budget this current fiscal year, the volume projections were off. As Garth mentioned, we had very limited data for the new communities, and the actual data came in quite a bit lower. So that's responsible for the revenue miss. But at the same time, power costs were high, and that's a function of just the dynamics in the market. We're seeing price spikes, we're seeing higher prices, and so
that small changes in the power supply budget really can have a big impact on the surplus, because we're really talking about a relatively small difference between two large numbers when we're looking at the surplus, the difference between revenues and power supply cost. So it doesn't take much of a variance to one or both of those numbers to really have a significant impact on the surplus, and that's what we saw.
Oh, yes, please.
Hi, this is Sloan Bailey speaking. Garth, could you comment on whether Ray has correctly observed we're not going to hit reserve target for next year? And secondly, if that is, as I presume, a correct observation, when do you anticipate us hitting our target reserves?
Well, I'm a little hesitating a little bit because of the what I understand our days cash on hand target is versus the 90 days and then other contributions on top of that. So I don't have a good sense certainly looking forward. And again, I'm going to be talking about 140 days cash on hand based upon that budget. And again, additional complexity is we're allowed to, and the metrics to also count our lines of credit towards those days cash on hand. So, but just on the pure cash basis, again, we're certainly not going to hit that goal in the next fiscal year, given the projections. But I think, as John said, a few things kind of turn in our favor, both on the revenue side, but more importantly on the energy cost side, and then those margins, it all goes to the bottom line when we're off on projections, right? So if we had a decent year in fiscal 2021, I think we could get pretty close. If we could put another 30 to 50 million to the bottom line, I think we could get very, very close to those goals. But certainly next year looks very skinny. And as I mentioned, there are a lot of variables out there that are going to change this budget, both in terms of energy costs, but also, again, we're going to have to look very closely after we get everything we need to get from PG&E to be able to determine just what MCE can do on the rate side. Because again, we're using the same rates to project our revenues for the next fiscal year. And hopefully there'll be an opportunity to relook at those and make adjustments as necessary to get those margins up.
Thank you.
Director Withey, I'm sorry.
Scott Perkins, San Ramon, out here in Concord. So when we approve this budget, obviously we can't approve the energy revenue and energy expense are projections. They really don't have much. You can't count on them one way or the other. But the operating expense, we do have some control over that. And when we approve the budget, we're directing the CEO to stay within those numbers of 29,916,000, and you do not have authority to go over that. Is that true?
Yeah, that is correct. So the line items that you see on the budget here are the line items we need to stay within for each category.
Right, and
we also have specific signing authority for myself and others, and so we will frequently be bringing contracts to your board, like the Clear Results contract, for example, came on the consent calendar because that was above my signing authority.
Don, this is, I'd also like to add, so, and this is in response in part to Director Lyman's question about the finance budget. So as I mentioned, we're moving the contingency, which is in this case about $850,000. In the past, it was last year, or this current fiscal year, was approximately more like $2 million of contingency that was built into each individual line item. And we want to tighten that up. And so, because again, if you look in terms of the original budget for this fiscal year and what's actually going to be spent, it's about $2 million low. So on the budgeting side, we wanted to tighten that up. And instead of putting 8 to 10% in each line item, we're reducing that total to 4% and putting it in finance. So again, it's a much tighter way to budget. And then what we want to be able to do, and this is sort of effectively requested here, is to be able, if we've got a problem in an individual line item, we'll apply that contingency there. If we have any issues with contingency, we'll come back to the board and say, hey, you know, we under budgeted in these areas, we're using too much of our contingency, and we'll ask for a budget amendment.
This is Greg
Elizabeth
Lyman.
Patterson with a question.
Could you, Greg Lyman would like
Greg Lyman,
to respond
just to
to that.
respond to that last one. I looked back, and our operating projection last year was 26.9 million, and you're showing us as actually spending about 24 million. So there was about 2.9 or even more than 10% contingency that wasn't used. So I respect that you are tightening up the budget and taking some of that contingency out. So thank you.
And also, I did want to respond, Director Lyman, to one of your earlier questions. Again, and that is in part that 1.4 million in the finance budget, but actual total of full-time employees from the current fiscal year to next fiscal year, there is not projected to be any change in the number of employees. The change of the possible additional FTE in finance is a person that's transferring from another area into finance. And that really, literally has just been proposed in the last week or two. So from the time we put the budget together and had a head count in finance, we're looking at moving one individual from another area of MCE into finance.
Elizabeth Patterson in Concord. So on the contingency funds that aren't spent on the budget line items, where does that go at the end of the year? How do you account for that?
That effectively goes to the bottom line, you know, to our net. So if we don't spend that money, and when we get our audit done, we look at the actual expenditures, actual revenues, and that net goes to the bottom line.
Thanks.
Any other question? Director Withey.
Yeah, thanks. I actually like your new budgeting methodology. I think that makes perfect sense because it really will tighten it up. Having listened to all of this, my take home is I really think it would be good for us to revisit our reserve policy. Not so much in you know, whether it be the actual policy, but maybe the projections to reach the reserve target is something that because I actually like the policy. I'm just more interested in what is now a realistic projection, and then so the board can get comfortable with whether you know, that time course makes sense. So I think that would be very helpful for everybody.
Yeah, if I may, I think the board will have significant opportunity, given the challenges we are facing, to not only to look at the debt policy, fundamentals of rate making, fundamentals of expanding further on, you know, we're with our mission statement in expanding in net energy metering. When we expanded into Contra Costa, we went from about 40 megawatts to over 250 megawatts of NEM. That's a very large city that doesn't use any electricity, basically. So I don't know of a utility that has that large of a NEM in its service territory. So we should be proud of that. That comports with our vision statement. But going back to the budget, we have some ideas what to bring to you in like bifurcating the energy costs from separating the RA from energy from ISO costs, because I think you all need to know the significant challenges we are facing in diminishing the spinning mass existence in the state of California, and PG&E's competing against our own purchasing capability by them being on the market to buy, while we thought we can buy from their surpluses. The variability of energy in the area that we are in with significant weather changes that we are exposed to in Contra Costa versus in Marin or Napa are significant, like John said, in the ISO market when you are on the margin less than 5% exposed. You'll pay the price a lot of times. So long story short, we're gonna have ample opportunities with the ad hoc committee, with the financing and rate design to bring a lot of the details to you. And with the collective you know, approval, we will be amending significant amount of these looking forward. But thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, and if I could just follow up on that, after this budget came to the executive committee, I had many of the same concerns that Director Withy did, and I think that I agree going forward, we do want to take a look at our reserve policy, but I also think that the new way of that Garth's approach to the budget and trying to clean a lot of things up and tighten things up and make items more transparent and more understandable is really good, and it has spawned a very good conversation, I think, for all of us as directors. And it's certainly highlighted for me not only the importance of looking at our reserve policy, but also really thinking through and talking about our budget with the sense of some of the challenges with the quality of the data that we're actually have available to us and we can use as the basis for projections. And then with the risk factors, the various risk factors that Vic and you've talked about, and Dawn and Garth. So I feel like we have advanced the state of the conversation and our awareness about a lot of the issues that are significant to planning a budget and projecting expenses and revenues going forward, and that we're going to have, with this improved framework, a better system going forward. But we absolutely do need to look at the reserve policy and continue to think about those risk factors. So Kevin, yeah, did you want to add on?
Yes, I want to echo all the comments that Kate, you just shared with us. Having been on the executive committee, I've had the benefit of hearing these presentations already, and feel I have a pretty good sense of the challenges that we're facing going forward. And a lot of the issues that we've been discussing here tonight are really policy related that go beyond the scope of the budgetary discussion that we're having tonight. I want to express my appreciation to Garth, to you and your team for doing a terrific job forward in the sophistication of our budgeting methodology and practices. I think it's a terrific accomplishment and gives us a good baseline for having some of the policy discussions that we're going to need to have. The biggest challenge that I've seen in all of this has been we had bad data going into this year, by and large, and that's not something we had any. As a prudential matter, we're going to have to make sure we're on top of that issue going forward. I think we are, and I think that the budgetary exercise that you've gone through will allow us to do that. So thank you again for all of that, and unless there's more discussion, I'd be happy to.
Ask if there's any other questions or comments from directors. Okay, seeing none, motion would be great. Kevin, any public input I should ask for that? No. Oh, no, absolutely not.
Was my mic
no
off?
budget people at the back of this room.
Oh,
I can
okay.
see that.
Okay. So I've got a motion on the table to approve the budget.
So we have actually two, let me just say, we have two aspects here, Kevin. One is to approve the proposed budgets for fiscal 2019-20, and the other is the consolidation of the local renewable energy development fund and the renewable energy reserve fund, and rename that new combined fund the local renewable energy and program development fund. Thank you. All right. All in favor?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. Thank you very much, Budget Team.
Chair, I apologize. We had a second over here, but it sounds like you might have had one over there.
We had a plenitude of seconds. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, Darlene is over here, and
All
she
right, well,
heard Director Perkins second the motion. Sorry,
right.
I think maybe
Director Athos will cede the second.
Okay.
That's fine.
we might have had a mic issue over there.
No,
I'm
don't
not
worry.
sure. Okay, thank
All
you.
right, so at this point, I'd like to have a little conversation about agenda triage because I'm mindful of how late it is. So let's talk. I'm hoping that the next item, the resolution appointing the Chief Operating Officer as Treasurer, will go extremely quickly. I'm mindful that perhaps there's some urgency or at least desire for speed to consider item number 10. Is there anything coming after item number 10 that's urgent for the board's agenda this evening?
I believe all of the action items are expected to be relatively quick and are somewhat urgent, as we haven't had a board meeting in a couple of months. So it'd be great if we can work through those. I know folks would appreciate hearing item 13, but if it's necessary, we could defer that to a future meeting.
No, I know we've been looking forward to item 13, but if we're really tired and cranky, we probably won't appreciate it. I'm thinking, just speaking for myself. No. So if it would be possible to defer that, I think that might be good. And then let's see if we can get through the rest of the items. All right. So let's move on immediately to item number 9. Vic and Dawn, who wants to talk about the switch in our treasurer assignment?
Yeah, I can speak to this item. So I want to start off by recognizing Director Athos for her service as the appointed MCE treasurer for many years. And as you all have probably noticed, the obligations and the budget related to MCE is calling on some additional time being spent on that task. And with that in mind, and also because we are looking at increasing our activity on the investment front, we have brought forward a recommendation that the board approve a resolution appointing our Chief Operating Officer as the treasurer of MCE. We would need to do a roll call vote because this is a resolution. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
We have one here.
I'll move it. I'd like to ask one question really quickly, though. This is Tim Mcgallion, Vice Mayor, City of Concord. Why have we decided to have the Chief Operating Officer versus the Finance Director as a treasurer? That seems like that would be more appropriate to have Garth doing that.
That is an excellent question. And we actually teed this up late last year before we had our finance director in place. And because he was new in the role, we thought it would make sense to have our chief operating officer serve in that role as Garth reports to him and can delegate the treasurer authority to the staff member that he sees fit, which likely would happen. We certainly could switch it to finance director, but that was the reason for it.
Or if nothing else, should we at least add in that?
Would you turn your microphone on, please?
Sorry.
Can't hear you.
Tim Mcgallion again. Or if nothing else, should we add in there that he would be designated as or deputy of?
That action doesn't take board authority, so that is something that our COO would have the ability to do after the board action tonight.
Any other questions from directors? Director Athos is desiring to make the motion to get herself off of the treasurer responsibilities.
Yes, I will move.
Is there any public in Concord who'd like to comment on this item?
Second the motion.
Thank you.
We have a second, Director Patterson.
All right, and we do need a roll call vote on this?
Yes. City of Belvedere.
Yes.
City of Benicia.
Yes.
City of Concord.
Yes.
Contra Costa County. Town of Corte Madera.
Yes.
Town of Danville. City of El Cerrito.
Yes.
Town of Fairfax.
Yes.
City of
Ran in and voted.
City of Lafayette.
Yes.
City of Larkspur.
Yes.
County of Marin.
Yes.
City of Martinez. City of Mill Valley. Town of Moraga.
Yes.
County of Napa and all 5 Napa cities.
Yes.
City of Novato.
Yes.
City of Oakley. City of Pinole. City of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
City of Richmond.
Yes.
Town of Ross.
Yes.
Town of San Anselmo. City of San Pablo. City of San Rafael. City of San Ramon.
Yes.
City of Sausalito.
Yes.
Town of Tiburon. City of Walnut Creek. Roll call complete.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to item 10 on the agenda, which is the amendment to the MCE policy 014. That's the investment policy. And who is going to kick off this item? Garth.
I am, yes.
Very
Thanks.
good.
Thank you, Director Sears. So,
Thank you.
the amendments to the investment policy, the original investment policy was implemented in April of 2018, and amendments were brought to the Executive Committee in October of last year. There was a lot of discussion around that. Really, it was much around the treasurer function and so on, and potentially moving that to staff. We wanted to bring back the potential amendments to the investment policy, and also we've really enhanced the investment policy with some additional protections, but the primary changes are really related to permitted investments, the proposed additions are far more conservative than those that would be available under the California Government Code. Additionally, they are more conservative. There's fewer investment options than even those of our communities. We took a look at 7 of them and included Napa, Marin, Contra Costa County, cities of San Rafael and Concord, and the towns of Corte Madera and Tiburon. And what we're proposing here in terms of additional permitted investments to include U.S. federal agency securities, bankers' acceptances, what are called placement service deposits, which are basically just FDIC-insured bank deposits, money market funds, and also commercial paper. So again, these proposed additions to our permitted investments are in all, at least certainly in the first 7 member communities that we looked at. And in fact, many of those communities had additional investments beyond what we're proposing here. Some of the additional amendments are a requirement that we come back to the board annually to review the investment policy. Additionally, another requirement is that any time an investment is made, an investment in a security, that we would report that to the board, and that we'll be making monthly reports of all of the investments and the yield on those investments, which will be part of the monthly financial package that we do. So again, the Executive Committee approved these proposed amendments to the investment policy. The fiscal impacts are unknown. We assume that interest rates move around, but we are not well invested currently. We basically have most of our money, except for $10 million in bank savings accounts. And so we want to get this money well invested very safely, with the primary objective of safety first, liquidity second, and then yield third. So with that, we ask that the staff and executive committee recommend that the board approve proposed amendments to the investment policy.
And if I might just add on one thing, I wanted to remind folks, and for our new board members, the reason why we're at a point now where we're ready to begin really scaling up our investments is that during years when we've had a lot of expansion, we've used our cash on hand as working capital to create sort of a cushion, because we have to pay for energy before revenue comes in. There's a 3 to 4 month lag. And as we've discussed in the previous item, there can be a lot of variation. We're not doing an expansion this year. This is the first time we're really at a steady state with a significant enough amount of cash on hand that not investing it really would not be a great idea. So I want to thank Garth for thinking this through so carefully and giving us the overview.
Great, thank you, Don. Any questions? Yes,
Yeah,
Director
this is
Lyman.
Greg Lyman, El Cerrito. I found 2 discrepancies between the memo and the policy, and I just wanted to highlight those and find out which one you prefer, the memo or the policy. Both of the discrepancies are on page 3 of the policy. One of them is in the banker acceptance, bankers acceptances fund, I think it is. The second sentence says not more than 40% of the portfolio may be invested in this. Your memo said 30. I don't know which you prefer.
Yes, I have to go back and check. I think what we tried to do there is that the 40% tracks the government code, and I think in the end, with the memo, I think we were trying to tighten that up even further. So I think we are totally comfortable with and would ask for a 30% limit in bankers' acceptances.
So when whoever the motion maker is would need to change that particular one from 30 to 40. The second discrepancy that I found was from 40 to 30, correct? Yeah. And the second discrepancy I found, same page, is on the money market fund. In the money market fund section, it says money market funds may be invested in money market pursuant to section blank, or this number. A second sentence is missing, saying that you want to limit that at 20%, or at least your memo said 20%. Again, I'm gonna defer to your preference whether you want to put a sentence in there that limits the investment portfolio to 20%.
Right. The reference to the government code there is where that 20% is. So that so we didn't put it in the policy, but in fact, it is 20%.
Excellent. And then your memo didn't discuss the negotiable certificates of deposits. It wasn't on the table. You are asking for a 30% limit. Is there a time limit on those certificates of deposits? That there's none in the policy, but your table is blank on that. So I was just curious if there is a time limit that's needed for those.
So you're referring to the placement service deposits, not certificates of deposit?
No, the negotiable certificates of deposits, funds may be invested in negotiable certificates of deposit in accordance with the requirements of section 53601. It's on the same page 3. It's not on your table, so I couldn't compare it to the table. It's between the two red.
Right. So I'm sorry, I missed the question, Director Lamon?
It's not in your memo.
Right.
Your memo describes time and limitations of the portfolio mix. You've asked for a 30% cap on that in the portfolio mix. My question is there a time limit for these, or is it unlimited time? I don't know enough about the investment policy, the investment vehicle, to know if there's some sort of time limit that these types of documents. Term limit, right.
Right.
Mike?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, I believe that actually those investments were not, those weren't changes. That actually, that it's redlined, but in fact it wasn't. Negotiable CDs were, I think, always part of the investment policy. But off the top of my head, Director Lemon, I don't recall if there was a limit to the amount of the portfolio or a term that could be invested in CDs.
Any other questions from the board? Yes.
Garth, one minor correction in your statement. You said the executive committee approved and recommended the board approve it. You may recall that there were questions raised. Actually, I raised them, and they were the subject, Don, of our conversation today. And I thought either you or Garth were going to make some kind of statement this evening about your intention to come back to the executive committee at its next meeting to talk about some of those issues.
Yeah, this is a great time to talk about that. Thank you for raising it. Director McCaskill has some suggestions regarding this investment policy, primarily that we spend some more time really digging into what some of the terminology means and making sure that board members have any questions answered and have a lot of familiarity with the types of investments that we're considering. And we really liked that suggestion, and we'll be teeing that up, or would be happy to tee that up if there's interest among the executive committee members. We can plan to cover that at our next executive committee meeting. And that might allow us to consider if we want to make any additional changes. I think because of the benefits that we would achieve right away if we're able to get this policy in place, we may want to get this policy in place this evening, but plan to revisit it at the very next executive committee meeting that we hold, and bring it back to the board if it's determined that we want to make any additional changes. Does that capture what you were thinking, Director McCaskill?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
I have one more question on that policy. Tim Mcgallion, City of Concord. In the executive committee, we talked about kind of the going through this investment portfolio and some of the different things we're investing in, because you're talking about trying to look at some long-term and short-term approaches. It looks like, you know, we talked about LAIF and kind of reinvesting back into LAIF, which can still actually be a little longer. Were there other things discussed in terms of maybe camp or CalTrust, some of the short-term, medium-term, for some of the shorter timeframes that if we need to just be invested the 1 day, 3 day turnaround to be able to kind of have more liquidity? What was the conversation that was had around that, or has that been had?
Director Mcgallion, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry, I can't really see from here, but the LAIF actually is a short-term investment. I mean, you effectively can withdraw money the next, you put a request in 1 day and you get it the next business day. So it is not a long-term investment fund. And, you know, the yield on that fund, it's a much bigger fund, effectively a much safer fund than any local county fund that we might consider. So again, we had not considered, nor are we requesting that that MCE be able to invest in any other government-sponsored fund or state government-sponsored fund other than the LAIF.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to, this is Elizabeth Patterson, I'd like to move for approval with direction to staff that they continue the discussion at the executive committee after the approval.
I'll second that as long as the motion maker accepts the change in the banker acceptance from 40% to 30%.
You got it.
Thanks. This is Greg Lyman.
All right, great. Any further discussion? We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, very good. Thank you, everyone.
And apologies, Director Sears, but we need to do a roll call vote because that was a resolution.
Oh, drat. Okay, let's do it.
City of Belvedere,
Yes.
City of Benicia,
Yes.
City of Concord, Contra Costa County, Town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
Town of Danville, City of El Cerrito,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax,
Yes.
City of Lafayette,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes?
City of Martinez, City of Mill Valley, Town of Moraga,
Yes.
County of Napa and all 5 Napa cities,
Yes.
City of Novato,
Yes.
City of Oakley,
Yes.
City of Pinole,
Yes.
City of Pittsburgh,
Yes.
City of Richmond,
Yes.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
Town of San Anselmo, City of San Pablo, City of San Rafael, City of San Ramon,
Yes.
City of Sausalito,
Yes.
Town of Tiburon, City of Walnut Creek.
All righty. So moving right along to agenda item 11, which is the resolution regarding local agency investment fund investments. Garth, you want to talk
Once
about
again,
this one?
yes,
Once
thanks.
again.
Director Sears. So in April of last year, the board approved resolution number 2018-05, authorizing investments and monies in the local agency investment fund. This resolution authorized a deposit and withdrawal of funds in the LAIF by CEO Don Weitz and Manager of Finance David McNeil. So as a result of staff changes, including the addition of MCE's COO, the departure of the Manager of Finance, and the appointment of a Director of Finance, it's necessary to rescind the resolution and replace it with proposed resolution number 2019-01. The new resolution designates certain members of staff, the CEO, COO, and Director of Finance to direct investments in and withdrawals from the LAIF. So again, fiscal impacts, interest rates vary on a daily basis, and incremental return on investments arising from the investment in LAIF cannot be determined with certainty. And staff and executive committee recommend that the board adopt proposed resolution 2019-01, rescinding resolution 2018-05, authorizing investment of monies in the local agency investment fund.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, would somebody like any?
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor? I think we got a roll call. Darn it, here we go again. Darlene, you're getting your exercise tonight.
City of Belvedere,
Yes.
City of Benicia,
Yes.
City of Concord,
Yes.
Contra Costa County, Town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
Town of Danville, City of El Cerrito,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax,
Yes.
City of Lafayette,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Oops, yes?
City of Martinez, City of Mill Valley, Town of Moraga,
Yes.
County of Napa and all 5 Napa
Yes.
cities, City of Novato,
Yes.
City of Oakley,
Yes.
City of Pinole,
Yes.
City of Pittsburgh,
Yes.
City of Richmond,
Okay.
Town of Ross,
Oops, sorry.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
Town of San Anselmo, City of San Pablo, City of San Rafael, City of San Ramon,
Yes.
City of Sausalito,
Yes.
Town of Tiburon,
City of Richmond, yes.
City of Walnut Creek.
All right. Okay. So moving right along, our next item is an ordinance that I hate to say it in advance is going to require another roll call vote, establishing an alternative claims procedure. So whose item is this?
This is Callina Murphy, legal counsel.
Fantastic.
So this is an ordinance, proposed ordinance to establish an alternative claims procedure that's pursuant to Government Code Section 935. Back in October, which was our last board meeting, your board introduced this ordinance and waived the first reading. So the next steps are to have a second reading and then have it adopted by the board. And then it will become effective 30 days after that. So the recommendation is to waive the second reading and adopt ordinance 2018-02, establishing an alternative claims procedure pursuant to Government Code Section 935.
Second.
Well done, Catalina. There, we had a second. Do we have a do we have a motion?
So moved.
Director Waddell made the motion. Director Sauce has provided the second.
Fantastic. And I don't think we have any remaining public, so let's go right into that roll call.
City of Belvedere,
Yes.
City of Benicia,
Yes.
City of Concord, Contra Costa County, Town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
Town of Danville, City of El Cerrito,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax, City of
Yes.
Lafayette, City of Lafayette,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes?
City of Martinez, City of Mill Valley, Town of Moraga,
Yes.
County of Napa and all 5 Napa cities,
Yes.
City of Novato,
Yes.
City of Oakley,
Yes.
City of Pinole, City of Pittsburgh,
Yes.
City of Richmond,
Yes.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
Town of San Anselmo, City of San Pablo, City of San Rafael, City of San Ramon, City of Sausalito,
Yes.
Town of Tiburon, City of Walnut Creek.
All right, very good. So I want to bring us back for a second since I was obviously tired and cranky with our last item on the MCE community activities, and I'm noticing that the PowerPoint is actually not that long. And I'm wondering if perhaps, given the hour, and I know people are tired and would like to go home, perhaps, and we do have the PowerPoint, but perhaps we could focus on the 2019 planned activities. What do you think, Dawn?
That sounds fantastic. And we're going to hear from.
And just do it quick.
Absolutely. We're going to hear from Director Heather Shepard, who's here with us this evening and prepared this slide deck with her team.
So thank you, Heather. Sorry for keeping you waiting and now making you go really fast, but there you are.
No problem. The good thing is I grew up in the East Coast, so I know how to speak.
You're good.
Hi, everyone. So I think Enya, we'll just advance then towards the end. So here, just skip through. And some of this is just information for new board members, just to get a sense of what our customer base looks like and some of the growth that we've experienced over the past year. So yeah, we can start here. So my team covers a few functions, and one of the critical things that we do is we do a lot of community partnering, and that's been very critical as we, introduce what we're doing to new communities, but also start deepening our engagement. So I wanted to talk a little bit, especially if you've seen, obviously, the high growth in MCE. This is a really neat time for us now to kind of dig a little deeper and figure out what we want to do to deepen our partnership with the communities and some of our key customers. So I just wanted to highlight here a couple things. These are just examples of things that we already have underway. So one of the things that's been really successful, and you heard about some other examples earlier with Gift of Green, but we're doing a lot more co-branded email outreach for some of our programs. So up on the right is just an example of a City Pinole and MCE co-branded email, right? Really working together to make sure that that's right on target. And we partnered with Contra Costa County on our very first Power Hour. So this is a new educational series that we're targeting our largest customers. And so it's very educational. We'll bring in experts. And we partnered with the county to sort of do that first one. And we're going to be switching locations. And we have had a lot of success on that. So we can move to the next slide. One of the things that will be an activity this year is just offering information about MCE should these communities decide to join. So what you're seeing right here are the communities in Contra Costa and Solano that are still eligible to participate or join MCE. And we have an inclusion period this year that ends in June. So that is just a snapshot of our service area and the communities that should, if they want to have a presentation or explore the process further, will be available to do that. And next slide. So I think many of you may have, you'll get an invitation to our solar and EV ribbon cutting, but I wanted to just take a step in and talk a little bit about Deep Green. So we just passed 10,000 customers, and next year's our 10 years of service. And so one of the things we're going to be kicking off next month at the solar and EV parking lot ribbon cutting is our campaign to double that number by the end of next year to celebrate our 10 years of service. So it will be sort of about a year and a half long of events. There'll be lots of partner and community toolkits that we'll be sending out, but that's going to be sort of a big mainstay of what we're doing. We are, as Dawn mentioned, updating our website. So I know I included the link in, I think, one of the board communications, but the focus is really going to be on a better customer experience, really on navigation, really some of that key content, really trying to address some of the FAQs and some of the myth busting that is, can be a challenge out there. There's a lot of information, and frankly, there's a lot of misinformation. So we want to do that. And we also are going to be expanding our pages for communities, right? So a lot of you, if you want to, know what the emissions factors are, if you're looking at greenhouse gases and things that you can really, tools that you can add in your newsletter and other content, I think will really help. And we get a lot of those requests today, and we'd like to not have it be so ad hoc and really make that available more easily to everyone. And then finally, I just wanted to mention something that we're going to hope to kick off in the fall, and really want to get involved and do a little bit more of a local print campaign. We're really very deep in our local communities, and I'm not sure that that's always so obvious. So we have a lot of community partners, sustainability groups, drawdown. There's just, in each community, we have a very deep network of community partners. And I think we've got a lot of impact and successes that we should really showcase. We have very high participation rates across all of these communities. And I think we'd really, it would be good for us to, do something focused on local newspapers and really show that sort of web and that network that we've built, highlight our partners, and also just show the success so far, because it's really, the impact is really great. So was that fast enough for you?
That was really good, Heather. That was fantastic. And I'm really excited about the Deep Green campaign. I think we all need to, certainly I know in Marin, there's a lot of work we can do to do a lot better than we have been. And that's true everywhere. So I'm looking forward to 2019. Any comments, questions from the board? Any board or staff members? I want to thank everyone for staying longer than we usually have our meetings last, so appreciate that, and we're going to try to get done earlier in board meetings ahead. So, seeing nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.